Hey guys, so quarantine has led me to be able to take up a lot of my old hobbies and enjoy them once again. So one of the things I've been working on a lot is Legos. I love Lego building and I've just gotten obsessed with it. I have a panda at my desk because obvious reasons, but I really love this little kitty that I was able to make. But it took a really long amount of time, even though it's quite tiny, because all the pieces are super, super small. So the pieces are all this size. You can see that. It's a lot to do in order to be making this tiny kitty, right? And so imagine what it's like for your body to be able to make all the things it needs to make in order to be healthy, right? So our bodies are just amazing works of science that are able to create all of the different molecules that you need to survive. So if we start off with biology, because that is our subject, you start to realize how much your body relies on itself knowing how to do stuff. So all day long, your body's doing all these processes you don't even notice. So in order to begin, let's first start connecting the dots back to what we studied in Summer Bridge. So you guys got to skip over 8th grade science, but we were able to work on that information beforehand. And you may have reviewed it last year as well. So one of the things that we talked about in the Summer Bridge was chemistry, right? And how the smallest parts of matter were called atoms. And so our atoms are what makes up all things in the universe. Now, what if we're referring specifically to living things? Humans, animals, plants, right? So humans are animals, but I'm just adding them on there. So if we are considering living things, what is the smallest unit of a living thing? If you remember from your previous classes, it's a cell. So cells are the smallest parts of living things. Cells, however, are made up of a lot of different stuff. And cells themselves, within their organelles, within all these tinier things, we go back to atoms and we go back to making molecules from atoms of different elements. Now, there are specific molecules that are very, very important to life, and we are going to be talking about those today. And we're going to need to know how to build them using small pieces of that molecule. Let's get into it. So, our 4 macromolecules or biomolecules, we will refer to them sometimes interchangeably. There's a few differences. We'll talk about it. So these 4 molecules that make up life. Bio means life. Biology, bio, life, logy, study of life. So one thing I'm going to really need you to study all year long is that list of suffixes and prefixes, because yes, we are going to be studying a lot of scientific terms. And a lot of these scientific terms have roots in older languages. And so they make sense if you realize what the beginning of the word means or what the end of the word means. So I'm going to need you to memorize those prefixes and suffixes, and that's why we're going to have a quiz on them on Friday. So you'll notice I refer back to a lot of those prefixes and suffixes throughout these lectures, okay? So let's begin. Unit 1 of biology. Biomolecules. So they are biological macromolecules. So there's macromolecules that have to do with living things, and there's macromolecules that don't have to do with living things. The word that we are going to be discussing today are the biological macromolecules. Sometimes you might hear them referred to as macros in like the fitness or diet community, right? In nutrition, especially on YouTube. I know there's a lot of people that count macros, right? They're counting how much they're eating of different kinds of foods. And that is exactly what we're going to be talking about. So, you know, if you're a fan of Frumpy Fit or Chloe Ting or Blogilates or whoever you watch about fitness stuff, this will take you through what the science of it is today. So carbohydrates, those are our carbs, as we're commonly referring them to, but they're basically starches or sugars. And sometimes you don't think of them as sugars, but they are made up of sugars. So we'll get into detail on carbohydrates later on. The second one are lipids, which are our fats. Proteins, those you can think of like meats, nuts, seeds, some of those are protein based. Protein shakes are another example of proteins, right? The stuff the protein shake is made out of are the proteins. Nucleic acids, those are your DNA and your RNA. And like I said, we'll go into detail of each of these throughout these few days and the next week as well. So don't worry, I'm not gonna front load all 4 of these onto you today. Today, what I actually need to go through with you is some important words, key vocabulary that I'm going to need you to understand when we start talking about all 4 of these. So, what is a macromolecule? So I already told you what a biomolecule is, right? And I told you those are the biological macromolecules, but what is a macromolecule? So, like I said, biomolecules, macromolecules are a slight difference. Macro means big. And so your macromolecules are really large molecules. And for biomolecules, you have to remember these are organic. The macromolecules we're going to be referring to are organic molecules. So that means they are what makes up life. Life is organic. Something that is not alive is inorganic. If you've ever had to do recycling or separating trash into organic or inorganic, that may flash back something to you. If you haven't, don't worry about it. Just as long as you know, organic means life, inorganic, not alive, right? In means not. Again, prefixes, suffixes. Now, these macromolecules, right, they're very large, so they are made of smaller units. They are made up of a lot of atoms. We go back to the same thing. One thing is made up of a lot of tiny things. So these macromolecules are huge molecules that are made up of a lot of tiny little atoms. And the organic ones, the biomolecules, all have carbon. So any living thing has to have carbon, right? So if you think of whenever you've heard the word carbon dating, that's how they find out how old something is, right? So they find a fossil or a mummy, and they're able to date it back to when it was alive, right? This is a process called carbon dating because they're able to check the age of the carbon in that fossil or in that strands of hair, right? Whatever it is. That's how you're able to know the age of trees and the age of your teeth, right? When somebody finds like dental records for a fossil or for a body, right? In like forensics and forensic science, if you ever watched those crime shows, you will notice that they always are able to tell how old the victim was. So that's because we're able to date things like carbon. That's not always the method that's used, but that's a very common method used for a lot of different things. We're able to tell how old that is. And we're always able to tell if it has carbon, it was alive. If it doesn't have carbon, it wasn't alive. Our next word, polymer. So we know what a macromolecule is. Now what is a polymer? A polymer is very simple to understand if you remember your prefixes. Poly means many. So many mers, right? So it's a molecule made up of a lot of similar mers, similar, that might help make a connection. A lot of similar building blocks. So if you have, let's say, this piece of Lego, it's made up of 3 of these. Now, this would be a polymer of single pieces. There's many single pieces. Now, all of the pieces have to be the same in order to be considered a polymer. If the pieces that are making it up are not the same, then it's not a polymer, it's something else. Now, the building blocks that make up the polymer, so the polymer would be the large piece that has a bunch of the tiny pieces of the same kind together. The pieces that make up that polymer are called monomers, because mono means one. So the monomers are the smallest ones. The polymers are when they're bound together, a bunch of them, right? So if you think about it, it's kind of like a train. Each car on the train is a monomer. It's one car. When you put all the cars together, that makes a train. That's the polymer. So mono, one, poly, many. So once you have all those train cars bound together into one large train, that is the polymer. Now we're going to go in more in depth into this in class tomorrow. So if you have any questions, write them down and ask me tomorrow during class. And that's it for today. Answer the questions down below and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.